Welcome back, focused learners. Today on The Explainer, we're unpacking something literally all of us deal with, the dense, actionable science of habit formation. We're going to break down exactly how tiny, seemingly insignificant changes can actually compound into massive, life-altering success. If you've ever felt, stuck in a rut or just frustrated by a lack of progress, well, this is the operating manual for your brain that you've been waiting for.
To kick things off, just consider this absolutely stunning math. If you can get just 1% better every single day for 1 year, you don't just get a little better. No, you end up 37 times better by the time you're done. On the flip side, if you get 1% worse daily, you decline practically down to zero. It's basically the compound interest of self-improvement.
And this is exactly what the British cycling team did. Under performance director Dave Brailsford, they applied this concept called the aggregation of marginal gains. They didn't look for one massive, sweeping overhaul. Instead, they went to absolutely extreme lengths. They rubbed alcohol on their tires for better grip, they wore electrically heated overshorts to maintain muscle temperature, and get this, they even hired a surgeon to teach the riders the best way to wash their hands to avoid catching a cold. Crazy, right? But the result? Well, they completely dominated the 2008 Olympics, sweeping 60% of the gold medals available. Unbelievable.
So here is our roadmap for reprogramming your brain to achieve those compounding results. First, the power of tiny changes. Second, systems over goals. Third, identity drives true change. Fourth, the 4-step habit loop. And finally, hacking the habit laws. Section 1. The power of tiny changes. Crossing the threshold of success.
Okay, let's dive into this. To understand why we so often quit right before we actually see the results of our hard work, I want you to imagine you're sitting in a freezing cold room. There's an ice cube sitting on the table right in front of you. You can see your breath. It's 25 degrees. Ever so slowly, the room heats up. 26, 27, 31. The ice cube just sits there. Literally nothing has happened. But then it hits exactly 32 degrees and the ice finally begins to melt. A 1-degree shift unlocked a massive change. The critical takeaway here is that your previous efforts from 25 to 31 degrees, they weren't wasted at all. They were just being stored.
And that brings us to what's known as the plateau of latent potential. People so often quit their new habits because they hit this valley of disappointment. They work hard for weeks and see zero results, so they just give up. But they just haven't crossed this plateau yet. It's exactly like a stonecutter who hammers a rock 100 times without a single crack showing. But then, on the 101st blow, it splits right in two. The habit wasn't ineffective. The potential was just building up behind the scenes.
Section 2. Systems over goals. Why winners and losers look the same.
Now we're shifting gears to look at the stark contrast between our societal obsession with goal setting and the biological reality of how success actually works. We are so conditioned to set goals, right? The results we want. But what we really need to focus on are systems, which are the daily processes that actually lead to those results. Think about it for a second. Every Olympian running a race has the exact same goal, to win the gold medal. Well, if successful and unsuccessful people share the exact same goal, then the goal can't possibly be what differentiates winners from losers. The real difference is their daily system of continuous, small improvements.
In fact, relying only on goals actually restricts your long-term success. Let's say your goal is to clean a really messy room, and you finally summon the energy to just do it. Great, you have a clean room for a day. But if you maintain your slappy habits, which is your system, the room is just going to be messy again tomorrow. It's a totally temporary fix. Furthermore, a goals-first mentality forces this tricky either-or happiness conflict, where you're only happy once you achieve the goal. But when you fall in love with the process, with the system itself, you can experience continuous satisfaction every single day your system is running.
Section 3. Identity drives true change. Upgrading your internal beliefs.
Let's peel back the deepest layer of the metaphorical onion of behavior change. This is perhaps the most profound shift of all, realizing that true change absolutely starts with who you believe you are. Let's anchor this concept with a smoking example. Imagine two different people resisting a cigarette. The first person says, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit." Now they are hoping their behavior will change while keeping their old underlying belief that they are in fact a smoker. The second person, however, says, "No thanks, I'm not a smoker." Wow, that is a massive shift in identity. The objective isn't just to read a book. The objective is to become a reader. True behavior change is identity change.
Section 4. The 4-step habit loop. Deconstructing the brain's engine.
So we understand the mindset. Now let's look at the actual machinery. Psychologist Edward Thorndike's observations of puzzle box cats actually helped us uncover this endless four-step feedback loop that is happening in your brain in a split second all day long. First, there's a cue, which triggers a craving, which then prompts you to take a response, ultimately delivering a reward. And that reward satisfies the craving and essentially teaches your brain to automate that exact solution for the future. Cue, craving, response, reward. That right there is the fundamental engine of human behavior. Section 5. Hacking the Habit Laws, the operating manual for human behavior.
All right, now that we know how the loop works, here is your ultimate cheat sheet. If you've ever wondered why you don't do what you say you're going to do, like why you don't exercise or why you just can't stop eating junk food, the answer literally lies in adjusting these exact biological levers. To build a good habit, you must make it obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. And to break a bad habit, you just invert the laws. You make it invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying.
Let's dive into the very first law, making it obvious. Too often, we say super vague things like, I'm going to work out more. But a study showed that while only 35% of people who relied purely on motivation actually exercised, a massive 91% of people followed through when they used this exact implementation intention formula. I will exercise for 1 hour at 5 p.m. at my local gym. When you specify the exact time and location, you don't have to sit around and wait for inspiration to strike.
And this brilliantly illustrates another powerful way to make cues obvious, which is called habit stacking. This actually relies on the Diderot effect, which is the natural tendency for one behavior to trigger the next. Kind of like how washing your hands naturally reminds you to put the dirty towel in the laundry. By using the formula, after my current habit, I will do my new habit, you seamlessly chain a new behavior to an existing one. Like, after I pour my morning coffee, I will meditate for 1 minute. It creates this fantastic automatic momentum.
Now, on the flip side, what about breaking bad habits? Well, relying purely on willpower is a totally failed short-term strategy. Just consider the Vietnam War. 9 out of 10 addicted soldiers spontaneously quit heroin just by returning home to an environment that was completely devoid of their wartime triggers. If you want to break a bad habit, you have to make the cue invisible. Redesign your environment. Leave your phone in another room. Unplug the video game console. Make the bad cues disappear entirely. And make the good cues, like putting healthy apples in a highly visible display bowl, completely unavoidable. Moving right along to the second law, make it attractive. Neuroscience tells us that dopamine, which is the chemical that really drives our motivation, actually spikes right before a reward, not just when you get it. Think of a gambler seeing a slot machine. The spike happens before the lever is even pulled. It's the anticipation of a rewarding experience that is the actual biological engine of human desire. So how do we use that to our advantage? There's something called temptation bundling. You simply pair an action you want to do with an action you need to do. I absolutely love the real-world example of this engineering student named Ronan Byrne. He actually programmed his laptop so that Netflix would only play if he pedaled his stationary bike fast enough. He essentially bundled his required workout with his desired entertainment, making the habit of exercising incredibly attractive. Ultimately, everything we've talked about today really comes down to this one provocative question. Every single time you perform a habit, you are casting a vote for the type of person you wish to become. And here's the best part. You don't need a unanimous vote to change your life. You literally just need the majority. So, taking a hard look at your systems, your environment, and your cues, does your current daily routine cast a vote for or against the identity you wish to achieve? Really think about that. And then systematically change just one tiny thing today. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I'll catch you next time.